Welcome back to Legends May Live, where we explore the strange, the mysterious, and the downright eerie. I'm Drew, and today we're looking at 3 stories that make us question reality itself. On a summer night after work, an EMT who we'll call John got in his car and relaxed his shoulders from the tension of the day. Life as an EMT was always unpredictable. One day you may get a call for someone stuck between their toilet and the wall. Another, you might be needed at the scene of a devastating and bloody accident. This night it was beginning to storm, so John drove with a little extra caution. He had seen far too many times before how carelessness in rough weather could end. As he's about halfway home, he sees that on the road just up ahead it's barricaded off, apparently from a downed tree that made the road impassable. But just on the other side of the barricade was a high-end Mercedes. The hazard lights were on, so that plus the odd location with it being behind the barrier made it feel like John should really investigate, as someone may be in need of medical attention. So he pulled off the side of the road, grabbed his flashlight, and began walking toward the Mercedes. As he got closer, he could see that there were 3 people in the car. He knocked on the driver's side window and leaned in for a closer look. What he saw was really unnerving. The backseat passenger appeared to be asleep, but the front passenger was slumped over the dashboard. And the driver, well, they were just sitting there, staring straight ahead, almost like they were in a trance. No one reacted to John's flashlight or his knocking on the windows, so this was really concerning. Could it be carbon monoxide leak in the car? Is there something psychological going on, or what's happening? So John ran back to his car to grab some medical supplies to start a closer examination and begin administering aid. But about the time he got to his car, a utility truck pulls up and passes briefly between John and the Mercedes to turn around before leaving. When it pulls off, the Mercedes was completely gone. It didn't make any sense. This was the span of maybe 30 seconds, and this car was between a fallen tree and a barricade. Sure, it could have gotten out, but it would have had to have turned around, gone off-road briefly, and leave in John's direction. But none of that had happened. So what could have happened? A ghostly imprint from a past accident? A time slip where the past and present briefly intersected? Or something else entirely? Our next story is about a 12-year-old we'll call Molly. On an ordinary shopping outing, Molly was sitting in the family truck in a grocery store parking lot waiting on her mom, who was inside shopping. She was passing the time watching birds scavenge bits of discarded food from the ground and watching the clouds go by, when suddenly she sees this old man walking toward her with slow, deliberate steps. She didn't recognize him, so it immediately made her feel a little nervous, but she thought maybe he was just walking by and his vehicle was on the other side of her, or something like that. But then he stops, about 5 feet away. Molly's stomach tightened. Seconds felt like an eternity as this man just stared at her. There were no words, no movements, just the weight of his gaze. He had this expression that was really odd and hard to pinpoint. It was a mix of vacant yet knowing, and it was just eerie and all around unsettling. Then he just turned and walked away. For years this moment stayed in Molly's mind. This bizarre interaction filled her with questions. Who was this man? Why did he stop? And what was with his unnerving expression? Nevertheless, life continued as it does, and though the memory wasn't always at the forefront of her mind, Molly never let go of the odd experience entirely. It was always there among the thousands of other moments that had passed along the way. Then, years later, as an adult, she and her family were sitting together watching old videos from a trip to Yellowstone they took when she was around 1 or 2 years old. As they're watching the videos, they're enjoying the nostalgia, when suddenly Molly notices someone in the background. It's the same man, wearing the same clothes, and he has the same unsettling expression. It's like he was watching them through the screen. A sickening wave of disbelief crashes over her. It wasn't just someone who resembled him. It was him. The same clothes, the same eerily motionless stance, as if he had stepped out of time itself and followed her, slipping into the past and then back to the future, watching, waiting. The realization hit hard. This wasn't just a stranger, but someone who had been present at two different moments of her life, nearly a decade apart, with some apparent interest in her. Could this figure be someone watching over Molly, appearing at key moments in her life? The fact that he didn't interact but was always watching suggests an observer rather than a direct participant. Still, others wonder if it's something like a shapeshifter or mimics or some otherworldly entity who take on human forms. Or maybe it's more mundane. Could Molly's mind have subconsciously linked to unrelated people? Our last story takes place in 1979, when two English couples, Jeff and Pauline Simpson, and Lynn and Cynthia Gisby, set off on a road trip through France, heading to Spain for a vacation. As the two couples drove through France, they looked over the beautiful countryside and impressive architecture until they finally decided it was time to call it a day and find a place to stay for the night. They pulled off the main road as they found a hotel. It was old-fashioned and had this kind of elegant charm to it. Out front there was this big antique wooden sign, and as they made their way inside, the two couples looked around a bit to see that this place was like something from the 19th century. The owner of this place must have gone all out, because none of this seemed like it was just made to look old. It was like it was old. Outdated, but just really well kept up. As they approached the counter, the receptionist greeted them, and fitting in with the theme of this hotel, he was dressed in an odd old-fashioned uniform. They checked in, and as they began to settle into their rooms, they started to discuss among themselves how strange this whole place is. I mean, it's one thing to go all in on the decor and designs, but this place really overdid it. All of the furniture inside was antique. Sure, it was well kept, but antique furniture, while beautiful, lacks a degree of comfort. But that's not all. There were no modern conveniences like telephones or TVs, and even the doors had wooden latches instead of locks. Still, this was fine for one night. They just needed to grab a bite to eat and a bed to sleep in anyway. So before calling it a night, the two couples went to a nearby tavern for dinner, and apparently this place must have been some sort of partner with the hotel, because much like the guests and workers in the hotel, the people here were also in old-fashioned clothes. After some dinner conversation and shared laughs, they paid for their meal, which, to their pleasant surprise, was unusually cheap. Then they headed back to the hotel to get some sleep. Despite how odd the hotel seemed at first, the couples had a restful night's sleep and even took some photos of the building before checking out. After that, they hit the road and went to Spain. And once they got there, they started thinking about their experience, and they came to the conclusion that, yeah, it was an odd place, but it's really because we were expecting something different. It really wasn't bad, and the prices were just so good. So they decided they would return to the hotel on their way back through. Once they wrapped up their adventure in Spain, they started to head back the same way they came. But as they're going along, retracing their route, they start getting closer to where the hotel was, so they're looking out the window to make sure they don't miss their exit. But then they finally get to the exact spot where they had stayed, and there was no trace of the hotel. Not even the antique wooden sign out front. So no building, no sign that it had ever been there to begin with. Confused and still needing a place to stay for the night, they went to another hotel in the area. And as they were checking in, they asked about the one that they had previously stayed in, only to be met with blank stares and confused expressions. The locals swore that no such hotel had ever existed. But what's more bizarre is that when they developed their photos, all the ones that they had taken of the hotel were missing. Every single picture of it had vanished from their rolls of film. And so we're left with more questions than answers. 3 stories, 3 eerie experiences that defy logic and challenge our understanding of time, space, and reality itself. Were these moments mere tricks of the mind? Coincidences that seemed too strange to be real? Or did these individuals genuinely step into another timeline, another dimension, if only for a fleeting moment? Perhaps reality isn't as solid as we believe it to be. Maybe, just maybe, the past and future occasionally bleed into the present, leaving behind fleeting, unexplainable moments for those lucky or unlucky enough to witness them. One thing is certain, the world is full of mysteries, and sometimes the strangest things happen when we least expect them. And that's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed today's stories, be sure to like, subscribe, and send to a friend who loves his strange tale. Until next time, keep your eyes open and keep a lookout, because it turns out legends may live.